Violet Affleck is an adult woman. Yes, she's responsible for her own choices and statements, but she's also a casualty of the most unscientific and heavy-handed government overreach in modern history, all in the name of public health. If you've been on the internet at any point in the last few years, you've probably seen this meme featuring actor Ben Affleck. It's a photograph that was originally published by an outlet called The Cut. Affleck is smoking a cigarette with his left hand in his pocket, eyes closed, looking extremely annoyed. It's from his 44th birthday back in 2016 when he was spending time with his estranged wife, Jennifer Garner, and their children in London. Then Ben Affleck sees the paparazzi and sighs, easily the single most documented sigh in all of human history. Supposedly, Affleck was just trying to get some alone time, and he was really bothered by the paparazzi hounding him. Or at least that's the official story. As with every other monumental event in human history, like the moon landing or 9/11, conspiracy theories have abounded. And in this case, there's some doubts about the precise reason for Ben Affleck's sigh. People have wondered whether a world-famous celebrity like Ben Affleck would really be so bothered by some paparazzi that he'd sigh in such a dramatic fashion. And maybe there's some other deeper explanation, one that's not discussed in polite company. I've certainly been transfixed by this question. Ask anyone who knows me. It's like I'm up thinking about it. This meme has consumed me. Unfortunately for people like me, nearly a decade later, the truth has finally emerged. We can now state with certainty precisely why Ben Affleck looked to be in such great despair as he smoked that cigarette by himself in London. Behold this new footage of Violet Affleck, Ben Affleck's daughter, who was apparently with him in London when the infamous photo was taken. This is from Violet Affleck's speech at the United Nations the other day, because for some reason the children of celebrities are giving speeches at the UN. I don't know. When the president of the United States, isn't being pranked and harassed, this is what they're doing over there. This is what Ben Affleck has to deal with also from his own daughter on a regular basis. Watch.
For adults, the relentless beat of back to normal, ignoring, downplaying, and concealing both the prevalence of airborne transmission and the threat of long COVID, manifested in a series of choices. Young people lacked both real choice in the matter and information about what was being chosen for us. Here's what we know about SARS-CoV-2. It is airborne, floating and lingering in the air. One infection can result in disabling damage to almost every cell in the body, from the brain and heart to the nerves and blood vessels. Every subsequent infection increases the risk of long COVID and places people who already have it in greater danger. We have access to a technology to prevent airborne disease, something that millions of our ancestors and millions of people around the world today would kill for, and we refuse to use it. And I shudder to think of where we will be in another 5 years of unmitigated infection and reinfection. My hope for this event and my belief in this community rest on the belief that we can and we must do that again. We can recognize filtered air as a human right as intuitively as we do filtered water. We can create clean air infrastructure that is so ubiquitous and so obviously necessary, tomorrow's children don't even know why we need it.
There's a lot to consider here, obviously. This woman is a petri dish of cluster B mental health disorders on full display. She's still wearing a mask in 2025. And if I felt like it, I guess I could go through everything she said line by line, talk about how she's clearly suffered irreparable damage from the COVID propaganda and the lockdowns. We could talk about the absurdity of the phrase, the relentless beat of back to normal, or the way she talks about long COVID as if it's an actual thing. But before we do any of that, I have to admit, I don't want to address anything she said. Nobody does. You just want to go quietly outside, maybe light a cigarette and look upward at the sky, visibly annoyed by what you've just heard. But knowing full well that honestly there's no point to engaging with any of it. And if paparazzi happen to take your picture, who cares? At least you're far, far away from that woman. Now, to be clear, Ben Affleck has had to put up with this kind of melodrama for a very long time. His daughter has made a habit of giving little speeches like this to anyone who will listen. Last summer, for example, Violet Affleck told a county meeting in Los Angeles all about long COVID and how important it is to wear masks and provide UVC light in prisons even. Watch.
Hi, Violet Affleck, Los Angeles resident, first-time voter, I'm 18. I contracted a post-viral condition in 2019. I'm okay now, but I saw firsthand that medicine does not always have answers to the consequences of even minor viruses. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown that into sharper relief. 1 in 10 infections leads to long COVID, which is a devastating neurological cardiovascular illness that can take away people's ability to work, move, see, and even think, stands to exacerbate our homelessness crisis, as well as the suffering of many people in our city. It hits communities of color, disabled people, elderly people, trans people, women, and anyone in a public-facing essential job the hardest. To confront the long COVID crisis, I demand mask availability, air filtration, and far UVC light in government facilities, including jails and detention centers, and mask mandates in county medical facilities. We must expand the availability of high-quality free tests and treatment, and most importantly, the county must oppose mask bans for any reason. They do not keep us safer. They make vulnerable members of our community less safe and make everyone less able to participate in Los Angeles together. Thank you.
Now, to be very clear about this, she's claiming that 1 in 10 COVID infections leads to long COVID, which she describes as a devastating illness that takes away people's ability to work, move, walk, and even think. Now, that's true. There would be nearly 100 million people in the world right now who are basically comatose because they contracted COVID 5 years ago. Entire countries would be full of zombies. The global economy would have collapsed by now, many times over. Now, granted, a version of that actually is happening, you might argue, but it's got nothing to do with imaginary illnesses like long COVID. Did you know that roughly 36% of Americans have below average credit scores, which can make borrowing more expensive and difficult? That's where Kickoff can help. Users with credit under 600 grew an average of 84 points in their first year with on-time payments. You can start building your credit right away for just $1 in your first month. The best part is the autopay takes care of everything automatically. So you're building credit even while you sleep without ever having to worry about missing a payment. The whole sign-up process only takes a few minutes right from your phone. There's no credit check required, and you can cancel whenever you want. With over 1 million users and hundreds of thousands of positive reviews, it's no wonder it's the #1 credit builder on the App Store. Start building credit with Kickoff today, and you can get your first month for as little as $1. That's 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/Walsh today. That's Kickoff without the C. getkickoff.com/Walsh. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/Walsh to activate offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only. Subject to approval, offer subject to change. Average first-year credit score impact of plus 84 points. Vantage score 3.0 between January 2023 and January 2024 for Kickoff credit account users who started with a credit score below 600, who paid on time, and who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during the period. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score. Individual results may vary. So fine, let's talk about long COVID. Let's dive into the alleged data that supports this diagnosis. Here's an actual study from George Washington University published on the CDC's website that claims long COVID is a real thing. And we'll put it up on the screen. This is the best argument these people have. It states, quote, "We examined the prevalence and predictors of long COVID from a sample of 1,338 COVID-19 cases among university members in Washington, D.C. during July 2021 to March 2022. Cases were followed up after 30 days of the initial positive result with confidential electronic surveys, including questions about long COVID. The prevalence of long COVID was 36%. Well, that sounds pretty serious. More than a third of students and faculty and staff at George Washington University supposedly developed long COVID after contracting COVID. Now, immediately, a lot of other researchers pointed out that the results made no sense. The idea that 1/3 of the university, a relatively young and healthy group of people, were suffering from long COVID didn't seem remotely possible. Other studies, including one in Denmark, showed that fewer than 1% of COVID patients might be suffering from quote-unquote long COVID. And indeed, there were obvious problems with the methodology. For one thing, they didn't include people who contracted COVID without suffering any serious symptoms. Instead, they only included people who took lab tests for their COVID diagnosis, meaning patients who were much sicker than normal and or patients who are much more likely to be paranoid. So that kind of skews your results. But the biggest problem with this study is right here. Let's scroll down a bit and put this section up on the screen. Here's the definition of long COVID, which, again, is a totally real and not at all made-up disorder, we're told. Quote, "We define long COVID as experiencing more than one of the following symptoms lasting for more than 28 days after a respondent's 10-day isolation period ended. Difficulty driving, difficulty having conversations, difficulty making decisions, difficulty thinking, fatigue, feeling anxious, feeling depressed, sad, loss of smell, loss of taste, memory loss, muscle pain, muscle weakness, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, trouble sleeping, worsening of symptoms after physical activity, worsening of symptoms after mental activity, or other symptoms." In addition, respondents were considered to have long COVID if they reported still experiencing COVID-19 related symptoms at the time of the long COVID survey. In other words, if you didn't feel perfectly healthy and happy for 28 straight days after contracting COVID, or if you felt sad and didn't want to talk to people as much, then you have long COVID. If you have trouble driving or making decisions, you have long COVID. Which would mean that, like every woman has long COVID. If you complain of any problems, including problems that can't be identified using any kind of physical objective diagnostic test of any kind, then you're supposedly afflicted with this horrible disorder. I was just kidding about women. Not really. What's actually going on here is pretty obvious. Long COVID is a form of conversion disorder, which is a mental illness in which people think they have a serious health problem. In response, they get stressed, which has some effects that in their paranoia, they confuse for an actual health problem. It's anxiety. And that would explain why long COVID is overwhelmingly common among women, especially ones who have existing mental health disorders. Here's some data from the U.S. Census Bureau on that point. Women are 45% more likely to report having long COVID than men after contracting COVID. And remarkably enough, people who identify as transgender are more than 109% more likely to report having long COVID than, normal straight men. Or to use the Biden administration's language, quote, transgender people's rate of severe long COVID was over 4 times the rate of cis men and women. Why might that be? Is it possible that people who are already in a distressed mental state might eagerly latch on to a new explanation for their problems? Is it possible that researchers have created such a broad definition of long COVID that pretty much anyone can qualify for it? Is it possible that instead of inventing new disorders that aren't real, we should require some kind of objective, measurable test before we diagnose people with brand new diseases? I could go on, but it's probably best to stop here. There is no objective test for long COVID because it's a fake disorder. There's no reason to wear a mask in 2025. There never was at any point. Unless your brain was broken by the politicians who deliberately locked everybody, including young people, in their homes for more than a year on the basis of junk science that never had a shred of legitimacy. The more you think about this, the more enraged you inevitably become. Violet Affleck is an adult woman. Yes, she's responsible for her own choices and statements, but she's also a casualty of the most unscientific and heavy-handed government overreach in modern history, all in the name of public health. And frankly, it's likely that nothing can fix her at this point. For all I know, that's what Ben Affleck realized in London when that infamous photo was taken. All I can be sure of is that after watching these 2 short videos of Violet Affleck, I understand that meme better than ever. And it's why the people who destroyed the lives of millions of children during lockdowns, who are now becoming very damaged adults, including, but certainly not limited to, this particular Nepo baby, are today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.